Guys, so we started a new series last week called Real Answers. We're talking about some real life, raw issues. Last week we tackled the issue of what do we do when we're dealing with difficult Christians? We're not talking about just difficult people. We're talking about difficult Christians, people that claim to know God, people that claim to serve God. What do we do with them? And we learned you've got to set some boundaries. Some of them, they can't be in your boat, man. You got to be like, bye, Felicia. But inside our heart bleeds because we want to help everybody. Pastor Steve wants to help everybody. But we realize that often we feel like we're giving up on someone, but in all actuality, we're actually giving them up to someone, and that's Jesus. Come on. People are so much better in the arms of Jesus, in the plan of Christ, than sitting, making it all cozy for them inside of our boat. And so we learned about that last week. This week, we're going to continue with another issue that people face, an issue that you face, an issue that I face. And we're going to be talking about what do you do when you feel like giving up? Come on, I know that I'm not the only person that feels like I want to give up. Every time I start a diet, I want to give up at the very next meal. I know all of you feel the same way. But a lot of us, we feel like, man, I am in a place where I don't know if I can keep going. The way that I'm living right now, I don't like it. I don't want to keep going. Some of you are like, man, I can't live another day like this. Some of you are like, I can't live another hour. Some of you are like, man, I can't even live another second the way that I am. And you're contemplating walking away from things. You're contemplating giving up and quitting in this time. And I've come today with a word for you, a word of hope. I want to encourage you today. Don't quit on your dreams. Don't quit on the education that you're pursuing. Don't quit on the business that you're pursuing. Don't quit on the ministry that God's called you to. Don't quit on raising those kids in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. Don't quit on that marriage that God has brought you into covenant relationship. I want you to be encouraged today that you can continue to press through. It is God's desire for you to press through and to live in victory. That is a promise to us Christians that we are more than conquerors, that we are victorious through our Lord Jesus Christ. I want you to know that that is something that you can hold on to and you can move toward. But often we will find ourselves in a place where we're like, man, I just want to walk away. I just want to quit. I'm just so done. But I'm also seeing that there are a lot of Christians that you're right at the cusp of a breakthrough. It's kind of like you're picking, you're searching for gold and you got your pick and you're just digging in that cave and you're like, it's too much. Been working on this too long with no results, yielding no gold. And you quit when you're only just inches away from a massive, gold vein. And I see that too often. I see people give up too soon. The Navy SEALs, they have this saying where they're saying when you're mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted, that you're only 40% done. You still got a whole nother 60% that you can press through. And there's too many of us that are quitting at 40%. We're quitting too soon. And I want to challenge you today. I want to encourage you today. Keep moving forward. In 2008, that was a rough year for Veronica and I, especially in the area of finances. As many of you know, looking back to that time, it was a time of recession. And we had built up a business, years prior, and we're feeling pretty proud and feeling good about what, God was doing through us. And then 2007, 2008 come, and it was just like, it was just horrible. And I remember I was in Palmdale, California, and I'm in a Lowe's parking lot sitting in my truck. And I just got some bad news from Veronica. She's like, babe, this is what's going on. And I'm just like, what are we going to do? And then I get another phone call that morning. And there's a contractor that we did a big project for. And he said, hey, Steve, I hate to inform you of this, but we're filing bankruptcy. And the $21,000 that we owe you guys, we're not going to be able to pay you. And I remember I hung up the phone. And I was I had a knot in my throat. I had tears flowing down my cheeks. Just keeping it real here. And I was so discouraged. I was so disappointed. And I felt that as if, God had abandoned me. I was like, what is going on? We were doing so good and we're trying to do all the right things. And it just seems like everything's falling apart. We're losing everything. And I remember that day I was so low. And I know that some of you, you're hearing my voice right now and you're saying, you know what? Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, we're there right now. We're over our head in debt. I can't sleep at night because of the stress and the anxiety. I'm so worried about our future, and I don't know what's going to happen. It feels like everything that we built, it's disintegrating right before our eyes. And I want you to know today that if you share that story with us, that you are not alone. And I want to encourage you today that God is the Redeemer. God is the Restorer. He is the one that will make every single thing right once again. But there is a process of fighting through that wall of wanting to quit. There is a process of fighting through that wanting to just wanting to give up and throwing in the towel. There is a process of fighting through that. There's some things that you need to understand today. Because see, often what we don't realize is the reason that we want to give up is because we feel under-resourced for the thing that we're facing. We feel under-resourced for the thing that we're called to do. See, some of you are saying, I have big dreams. I feel that God's calling me to something, but I don't have the money for it. I don't have the education for it. I don't have the willpower for it. I don't have the drive or the desire to keep going anymore. Some of you are looking at it saying, I don't have the opportunities that I need to see this thing happen. Some of you are saying, I don't have the education, I don't have the respect, and some of you are trying to hold relationships together, and you're saying, we don't have the love that it's going to take to get us through this. And there's a temptation to give up. But today I want to inspire you to keep moving forward, keep pressing, because when you feel under-resourced, hey, that may be a real scenario, but in the spirit realm, it's different, and I want you to see something. Go with me to 1 Samuel 13:22. This story is of Saul and Jonathan. Okay, Saul was the very first king of Israel, and Jonathan was his son. And here these guys are facing the Philistines. They're always fighting the Philistines, right? And some of you, doesn't it seem, I know in my life, it's like, man, why am I always fighting the same thing, man, the same battle? And but if you're fighting the Philistines, there's an issue. So as long as you're not fighting them, we're all good. But I want you to see something here. I want you to see that they were under-resourced. They were under-resourced for what they were called to do. See, they were called to stand in victory in the name of the Lord. But listen to this, 1 Samuel 13:22. So on the day of the battle, none of the people of Israel had a sword or spear except for Saul and Jonathan. Did you guys catch what that is? They go into battle and they've got no swords and they've got no spears. The only people that got it is the king and his son. So they've got a total of 2 swords and 2 spears, and they're supposed to fight all these people? Talk about being under-resourced. If anybody had a reason to quit, if anybody had a reason to just give up and give in and just get out of town, it was these guys. And the men of Israel, they were terrified. They were hiding in caves. They were hiding in holes in the ground. They were hiding behind tumbleweeds and rocks and stuff from the Philistines. They were terrified because they felt under-resourced. And they started with an army of 3,000. Now they're down to 600. People are just bailing left and right. But then something incredible happens. And this is something that you have to get today. If you want to push through that desire to quit, push through that desire to give up on the dreams that God has placed in your heart. And we're going to pick this up in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 6. So still talking about Jonathan, it says this. This is what he says. Talk about just crazy. He's ready. He says, let's go across to the outpost of those pagans. Speaking of the Philistines. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. This guy had something that you and I desperately need in the times that we're living in. He had this thing called courage. See, he was tired of sitting there and watching the men cower when he knew that he had this great God on their side. And he had the courage to tell his armor bearer, these 2 young guys, listen, if God gives us the green light, man, we are going to go up there and he's going to give us the victory. Because, see, Jonathan understood that his source was not himself. The source that he needed to succeed in that situation was this big God that he knew that could show up at any second. And you have to know today that if you are finding yourself feeling like you want to quit because you're under-resourced for the things that are ahead of you, I want you to know that if you get God involved in that situation, then you've got absolutely everything that you need. Come on, somebody, you got to make some noise online. You got to help me out here this morning. Listen, God is all that you need. And Jonathan was showing us right there that it doesn't matter if you got a big army. It doesn't matter if you got a small army. It doesn't matter if you got a huge bank account or if you got a small bank account. It doesn't matter if you got a huge team or if you got a small team. As long as you got God on your side, there is nothing that is going to hinder the plan that he has for your life. And you have to embrace that. You have to know that. You've got to step out in courage and say, okay, well, what's my part? Your part is to get walking. Come on. You see Jonathan, he's like, okay, we're just going to be crawling on our hands and feet. We're just going to move forward. And for many of us, what we do is that we want to give up, and that giving up, and that the position of giving up is just standing still. See, nobody's giving up when they're running. They're giving up when they've just stopped. Oh, can't do this anymore. Oh, man, I'm just so tired. I'm so worn out. But Jonathan got moving, and you and I, what God is saying to you and I today is you got to get moving. We got to keep pressing forward. We can't stop. There is nothing that is going to hinder the plan of God for your life or for my life. As long as we've got God, we've got everything. And see, what we have to understand is that to live a life of faith is to live a life of facing impossibility. Let me say that again. To live a life of faith is a life facing impossibility. See, that's why they call our God the God of the impossible. Why? Because he does impossible things. And with him, all things are possible. And see, as we walk through this life, that is going to be one of the hardest challenges for the believer, is that you're going to move forward and you have to constantly remind yourself that the situations that you are being called to are impossible within yourself. We need God to be on the scene. We need God to be present in our situation at all times in order for it to actually happen. And I want you to write this down if you're taking notes, that God will never call you to anything that will make him unnecessary. God will never call you to anything that will make him unnecessary in your life. See, he's always calling us to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that that's what gets us in trouble, because we want to do things on our own. There's this trend where people are like, what did God put you here on earth for? What's the plan? What's the purpose? What's your design here on earth? And often people want to know that, and then what they do is they take what God has designed them to do, and then they want to go and do it by themselves. God never intended for that. And when you do that, you're going to find yourself constantly discouraged. You're going to find yourself wanting to give up, because you're going to realize really quickly you don't have the resource to get the job done. We cannot become self-reliant. We have to be God-dependent at all times, because he is never going to call us to something that makes him unnecessary in our lives. So as we move forward today, I want to talk to you about how do you handle these times? What is it that you need when you feel like giving up? What do you need to do? How do you navigate these waters? And so, number one is this, is that you have to know where to find encouragement. You have to know where to find encouragement. I'm going to give you a clue right now. Go with me to Psalm 91, verses 1 through 2. It says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him I will trust. There is a secret place that you can tap into and find encouragement. There's a secret place that you can retreat into and experience the presence of God. And what happens in that secret place is God is going to speak to you. He's going to tell you some things that are going to bring clarity to you. God is going to encourage you in that place. God is going to strengthen you in that place. It's called the secret place. And see, some of us, what we need to do is we need to give ourselves a Jesus timeout. I don't know about you, but man, when I used to do wrong things, my dad would say this, he said, hey, go stand in the corner. Go stand in the corner. And if I was really bad, he'd be like, hey, go kneel in the corner. And my dad would say this. He'd say, think about what you're doing. Go stand in the corner. Think about what you're doing right now. And some of us, we need a Jesus time out in our life right now. Because what's happening is we're walking through and we're not thinking about what we're doing. We're not thinking about what we're saying. We're not thinking about what we're thinking about. What's happening is we're allowing the negativity. We're allowing the circumstances to control the way that we feel. We're allowing, the negativity to start, it's determining our actions and wanting to quit. It's allowing, our thoughts are speaking things to us and saying, this is how you are. You're a failure. You're a miserable mess right now. And we're entertaining those thoughts. But what if you did this? What if you retreated into the corner, got a Jesus time out going on, and you said, you know what, God, I'm really struggling right now, but could you tell me what you think about me? See, sometimes we don't realize the value and the importance of hearing what God says and what he thinks about you. There's been times where I've preached messages and I've walked off a stage and I was like, oh man, that was terrible. Man, I wouldn't even wanted to listen to that. And I would think of all the negativity and I said 2 Samuel instead of 1 Samuel. And I think of all the mess ups and all the mistakes and the fact that I stuttered, or maybe I said, too much. And I'm working through the stuff and I'm just beating myself up. But then I would retreat into the presence of God, and God would say, son, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you because people's lives were changed today because you decided to say yes. People's lives were changed because you decided to sacrifice your time and to study and to give of yourself for the betterment of someone else. I'm really proud of you, son. And there's times where I just weep in the presence of God because I realized that I was listening to the wrong voice. I was listening to myself. I was listening to the accuser. And when I got into that secret place, man, God can encourage me. God can build me up and he can strengthen me and speak the words that I need to hear. When we were going through that tough time in 2008, God spoke some really important words to me. You know what he said one morning? As we're just losing all kinds of stuff, just mayhem, just stress beyond stress. The Lord said this to me. He says, Steve, you thought that I gave you the business to grow the business, but I gave you the business to grow you. And you know what? From that day forward, something switched. And I knew it was no longer about the business anymore. The business could succeed or the business could fail, and it didn't matter. Because the whole purpose, God attached purpose to the pain that I was going through at that time. And I realized that he was more concerned with doing something inside here. He was growing me up. He was maturing me. He was stretching me beyond what I thought I could handle because he knew that I needed bigger capacity to use in the place that I was going. See, I could never be the leader that I am today had I not gone through what I did in those days. You know what it's done? Is in Veronica and I, it's created a compassion for people that are struggling because we've struggled. We know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to worry and to have anxiety. We know what it feels like to feel hopeless. And our heart bleeds for people that feel that way. And God was doing something 12 years ago inside of our heart that we would need for today. And I want you to know today that as you retreat into God's presence, he's going to speak encouraging words that you need to hear that are going to add purpose to what you're actually going through. I was watching this movie on the Navy SEALs, and it really, it jumped out at me. The Navy SEALs, they're this elite force, right? And probably one of the best known, and, just all around. But there's something that makes them unique. And it's the fact that they have mastered the ability to operate within the hostility of water. Okay? You're talking about water's a hostile environment. There's, undercurrents. It's dark. It's cold. Come on, there's some big stuff in there that like to bite people. But they've mastered the ability to stay calm and to navigate and operate within that hostile environment. So they come up out of the water and fulfill a mission. Here's what's interesting, though, is if they get ran over, they can retreat back into an environment that they're very comfortable with, that the enemy cannot stay in. This is the value of understanding where you can get encouragement, especially in the presence of God, is that as you come out in life and the enemy begins to attack you in the thing that you've been called to do, you have the ability to retreat into the secret place, into the presence of God. And the enemy cannot live in that environment. See, the presence of God is hostile to the enemy. The presence of God it's light, it's life, it's truth, it's love. And see, darkness cannot withstand the presence of light. Darkness and the forces of darkness cannot stand being in the presence of love. They cannot stand being in the presence of truth. And so when you're being attacked, what you do is you retreat into the secret place. And you're in the presence of God. And you stay there until you're encouraged. Come on, I hope that I'm helping somebody today. Come on. Number 2 is that you have to let encouragement find you. You have to let encouragement find you. So 1 is you need to know where to go find encouragement. That's in the presence of God. But 2 is that you have to let encouragement find you. See, often when we start failing at things, it brings about shame. Because see, we live in a culture in America where we put top priority on success and on image. And nobody likes to fail at anything. Nobody likes to go, oh yeah, we're just losing everything, man. Everything's falling apart. Marriage is falling apart. Kids are crazy. Just lost my job. Everything. Yeah, man. It's just, yeah. What happens most often is that when we start to lose, when we feel that we're failing and that things are not going right, what we will tend to do is to isolate. We back up. So instead of backing into the presence of God, we back up into the cave. Remember the men of Israel? They were afraid. They were hiding in caves. They were hiding in holes in the ground, behind tumbleweeds, hiding behind rocks. Often we will be tempted to do the same thing. Right before we're ready to quit, we will sink into isolation. And see, we have seen this happen time and time again with people. I can usually tell when people are strong in the Lord. Why? Because they're visible. And I can tell when people are struggling in the things of the Lord because they disappear. We don't see them online. We don't see them at church events. They don't respond to your text. They don't respond to your email anymore. They're off the radar because the shame and the guilt of us not succeeding, it will cause us to sink back into isolation. But I'm here today to basically call you out and say, listen, get up out of that cave. Listen, get up out of that hole in the floor. Stop hiding behind the tumbleweeds. Stop hiding behind the rocks. You have to let encouragement find you. See, in 1 Samuel 14:7, let's remember what was happening when Jonathan said, hey, man, we're going to go take these guys. This is what his armor bearer said. Do what you think is best, the armor bearer replied. I'm with you completely. Whatever you decide. This dude was his righteous ride or die. My question to you today is, who's got your back? Who's your righteous ride or die? You got somebody around you? You got a crew of people? Do you got a tribe that's rolling with you and ensuring that you're encouraged and that you're strengthened as you're pursuing the things that God has called you to? Do you have people around you that are encouraging you to keep that marriage strong? Do you got people encouraging you to keep raising your kids in the ways of the Lord? Do you have people encouraging you to keep pursuing that education and not quit on your college? Do you have people that are pursuing or are actually encouraging you to pursue the call of God on your life? Who's your ride or die? Who's got your back? Who's encouraging you? See, some of you, like I said, you got to come out of hiding and let encouragement find you. Let people get around you. I was reminded of this story of this man who once ran in the San Francisco Marathon. And, just in case you don't know, a marathon is 26.2 miles. That is a long run. Some of us get tired even driving 26.2 miles, let alone running it. And so in San Francisco, for most of you, that have ever been there, the weather's pretty stable and it's kind of cool most of the year. Even in the summer, it can be kind of cool there. Well, they had this unusually hot day. And on this marathon, so guys are running, people are passing out in the grass, people are trying to lay on the side of the road next to cars in the shadow, just trying to cool off, drinking water. It was really, really tough on people. And this man was telling the story of how he was running. He's running, running this marathon. And he starts to hit a wall. See, I've never ran a marathon, but I know people who have. And they've talked about you hit this wall. And there's this point where you just feel like you can't go anymore. You feel like, man, like every fiber in your body is crying out and saying, stop. We can't do this. This is crazy. Just quit. Like your legs are saying, no more, no mas, man. We can't keep going. And everything inside of you is fighting to stop. And you've hit this wall. And this guy was saying he started to hit the wall. And he knew it was coming. He's like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And he saw somebody holding a sign in front of him. And it says, 5 miles left. You can do it. You're doing a great job. He's like, oh, you keep going. And he's running. And then he sees this other sign, 4 miles left. Keep going. You're doing an amazing job. And people are cheering him on from the side of the road. And he keeps going. And then he gets down to the final miles, and he said this. He said they had these support runners that were prepared. And these support runners were on the side of the road. And as the runners are coming in, they would get alongside them, and they would finish the race with them. And the whole time they're going, hey, you've ran over 20 miles. You are an incredible person, man. You're an incredible athlete. You're an incredible runner. Come on. You've ran over 20 miles. There's no reason that you can't run 2 more. Let's do this. Come on. We can finish this. You're doing an incredible job. Keep breathing. Keep running. This is all going to be over in just a few minutes. Come on. Let's keep going. And they're encouraging their support runners. And I'm going to tell you, I want to be a support runner. Hub City Church, we are support runners. We want to come alongside you. When you feel like you're ready to quit, you're hitting the wall, you're ready to give up, I want you to know, we are here. We're ready to come alongside and say, listen, I know you feel like quitting, man. You've been married 8 to 10 years. Don't give up on that 8 to 10 years. You guys have invested in each other. There's no reason to walk away from that. God has a plan. God is a restorer. God is a redeemer. God is a healer. Come on, let's go. Let's not quit. Don't give up on your dreams. Some of you have been, you're right at the edge of finishing your college degree, and everything inside you saying, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the discipline, I don't have the willpower, I'll just finish another time. No. We're going to come alongside you. We're support runners. You can do it. Come on. Whatever it is that God has called you to do, Hub City, we want to be support runners next to you. You need that. You have to let encouragement find you today. Some of you are so isolated and you're so ashamed of the mistakes that have been made. You're so ashamed of the failure. And I'm just here to tell you today, let encouragement find you. You got to let those support runners come alongside you. And as they're running, you're listening to the encouragement. I can do this. I could do this. I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I can do this. Because God has strengthened me. Jesus has strengthened me. Come on. And what you're going to find is that in your life, as you receive that encouragement, it won't be long before you find yourself encouraging others. Listen to what Proverbs 11:25 says. It says, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. You're going to find that in life as you get encouraged by getting into the presence of God and letting him tell you what he thinks about you instead of you always talking about what you think about yourself. You're going to get encouraged with that Jesus time out. Come on, somebody. And then you have to let encouragement find you today. Come out of hiding, come out of isolation. Let the family of God get their arms around you and encourage you. Come on, don't quit. It's not worth giving up. You've come too far to turn back now. And then in turn, as you receive that encouragement, you're going to find yourself giving it out to others. I did something really crazy the other day because I don't like to preach messages that I don't live. And I was at a drive-through and there was this young girl and I could see she was struggling. She was messing stuff up. And it was kind of crazy, man, watching her. She's just kind of moving around. I could tell she's confused and forgot how to work the thing. And I just sat there and I just watched her. And then it's all over and she hands me my food. And I said, this may seem weird. I just said, this may seem weird, but can I just encourage you? And she looked at me like that was the weirdest transaction ever. I said, you're a really great worker. And I think you're doing a great job. Just keep going. You're going to do fine. And she just said, I could see, she had a mask on, but I could see her eyes lit up. And she said, thank you so much. I knew she was having a hard day. But I'm going to tell you, I don't want anybody to ever out-encourage me. When I walk in a room, I want to be the most encouraging force that walks in a room. And I would hope that you would want the same, my friends. That as we are encouraged in the presence of God, and we let encouragement come to us, it's going to start to flow through us. Life is going to get exciting because not only are you going to succeed, you're going to watch a lifetime of people around you fulfilling the mandate and the call on their life. That's when it gets exciting. When you and your whole tribe are living in the fullness of what God has called us to.